we are so excited that you're here today as we are discussing the foundation of corporations. And so this course really explores the legal framework and governing corporations in the United States. We will delve into the history of the business structure, understanding the concept of corporate codes, and examine the role of state governments regarding the regulation of corporations. We'll also discuss the crucial aspects of forming a corporation, including the process of incorporating and the concept of corporate taxes. I just want to really make sure you understand that the purpose of the course is really to give you a comprehensive foundation for understanding the structure itself and how you can maximize the use of a corporation and operating it here in the United States. We won't really talk too much today. Matter of fact, we won't talk at all today about how you can use your corporation outside of the United States. That will be in a future session, but we will just raise a little bit on, what it is that is allowed, with regards to corporate structures here. So the history of the business structure itself in the United States, I want you to really imagine this, a world where everyone came from somewhere else, okay, with the exception of the indigenous people that were already here. And when the need for commerce began to happen here, it was kind of the Wild Wild West, literally, okay? So the United States of America didn't have an organized way of conducting business. And generally speaking, there were no governmental involvements here that were started from here just yet when commerce started. So commerce predated the establishment of a government. People came here from somewhere else and they brought the concepts of doing business from where they came from. And they began to do business as individuals. A lot of bartering was happening, but literally the earliest form of business structure was the sole proprietorship. And that's where one individual owns and operates the entire business, responsible for all of the liabilities of the business. So, I love this little picture that I have here as we're kind of looking at people. They're standing around, you see shops and all of this kind of thing. But imagine a world where those things had to be built. There were no physical buildings or anything like that when they first got here. And people who did commerce, most often, because this predated really the use of physical dollars and cents per se. So there was a lot of bartering that initially happened with, different types of items and, fruits, vegetables, and the like. And people were really involved in, serving each other per se and making sure that, they were able to get along. Now, partnerships, which were an agreement between two or more individuals to share in the profits and losses of a business, with each partner responsible for the debts of the partnership, that was kind of the second level of business. After the sole proprietorships were going, people decided to start working together on different types of, entrepreneurial endeavors. And long after that, we get to having a more structured type of business, which we see as the corporation, which is a legal entity separate from its owners, offering limited liability to the shareholders and allowing for capital raising through the sale of stock. And that came, a lot, longer thereafter, if I could say. We're not necessarily talking about hard dates, we're just giving you a flow of how the business structures came to be. And so when we're looking at the corporate code, the federal government has given the responsibility for establishing a code of conduct among businesses and the commercial activities, to each state. And so each state in the United States establishes its own corporate code outlining the rules and the regulations for governing the formation, operation, and dissolution of corporations within its jurisdiction. It is completely within the state's responsibility to have an organized fashion by which these things might be done. And going from one state to another, when we're really exploring commercial code, we see a lot of differences. And we'll talk about some of those differences in a future session. But in this session today, I just want to kind of bring out the fact that, there are some key provisions in all of the codes. And typically they address these particular aspects: corporate governance, having shareholders, having the rights of shareholders be something that a person might put, and should put out there, whether there's going to be more than one type of stock, the corporate finance, how those things are going to be done, who's going to be responsible for, the day-to-day chief operations of the business, and who's going to be responsible for the fiduciary aspects of the business, okay, and taxation. How will the company be taxed? How will it handle tax, et cetera? And so these provisions provide a framework for the legal and ethical conduct of corporations within each state. And generally, we kind of call those things bylaws, okay? All right, and so the expressed privilege to establish what these bylaws are that people will be able to utilize to run their companies, that falls on the responsibility of the owners of the company. So the state's responsibility is really having a set commercial code that is across the board the same, for all companies under a certain provision in that state. And then it's outlined rules and regulations for how those things are going to be governed and carried out and enforced. That's in that code as well. And generally, how the companies need to be formed and filed, paperwork, how that filed paperwork should go to the state, that's going to also be in the code. And the way that a person should operate the business, according to that particular state, is going to also be in the state's code. And the way that a person should shut it down when they no longer want to operate their company, that dissolution information shall be in the code. Now, there's also other information in that code that falls under regulations and rules. If a person is not following the regulations and rules of the state, what needs to be done and how that can be handled is also going to be in the code. Those are all things that fall under the state's purview, under the state's responsibilities. But as far as how the internal functions of the company is going to be run, that falls under the purview of the person whose company it is. And so it is their responsibility to establish the framework for the conduct of people who work within the company, the standard operating procedures of the company, the administrative processes of the company. That is not something that the state government has anything to do with. As long as the person's company is following the commercial code, the state kind of allows the companies to do internal business the way that they need to, so that it is properly functioning. And then in terms of compliance, corporations must comply with the specific requirements of the code and, of the state that they're formed. Failure to comply can lead to legal consequences. Your corporation can be shut down. You can end up even with criminal charges if you violate certain laws. And so the corporate code is, what's more frequently communicated as the commercial code, and that code is one that is expected to be followed. So how do you find this commercial code or corporate code? Well, the first place that you can go nowadays is to the state government's website. This is the most common and reliable source for finding the entire corporate code of a specific state. It's their official website of the state government, Secretary of State, or Department of Corporations. Now, generally, in most states, you'll see something like SOS, which is Secretary of State, SOS dot, and then you'll see the state's name, Texas, .gov. That is going to be, one sure way that you could find the state's code. I believe, most states are, some states will have like SOS dot, TX instead of just Texas. It'll be like sos.tx.gov, which is the Secretary of State of Texas, and of course a .gov website is going to mean that it is an official website of the government, okay? Whether it's the federal government or the state's government. So in this particular case, it's the state's government. Now, generally on that website, there's going to be a lot of educational materials. I did a whole class on utilizing the federal and state websites as an entire college, okay? And the whole purpose of that was to help people establish a framework for where they can get information and how they can use that information and know that it's credible. So the states will publish information on their websites that gives them the ability to make sure that people understand, what it is that they allow and expect, and how, and even the things that they have available, to people who are running a business, and there's a lot of other information in the state's website as well. But this is just today, more concentrating our attention on how you can find out information about running a business, a corporation in that state. Then there's legal databases. Online legal databases like Westlaw and LexisNexis also provides access to state statutes and regulations, including corporate codes. And sometimes the entire corporate code is available on these sites. And so if you have access to the site, or you want to pay for access to the site, you can go to Westlaw and gain access, or to LexisNexis and gain access. And they have a very user-friendly, both of these, because I have access to both of them. They have a very user-friendly process for filtering the information that you're looking for specifically. You can really drill down and get to the crux of the matter, if I can say it that way, so that you have access to what you're specifically looking for. Then you can also use law libraries. Law libraries affiliated with universities or bar associations often have physical copies of state statutes, including corporate codes. Now, you might not want to do what I've done, but I'm just going to say this, not in my current location, but in previous locations of offices that I have had copies of the entire commercial code. Right now, I only have copies, I think, of California and Texas in a binder, or in two binders, in our current location in California. And my reason for that is because it just takes up a lot of space to have, the commercial code for all the different states, especially when you can use a tablet or a computer and gain access to it within about 2 seconds, okay? So it's not like it used to be, but years ago, I used to, every so many years, print off the commercial code and have a copy, because I'm working as a consultant or a business advisor. It was often that people would ask questions that I could only get by going to the commercial code. And sometimes in the preparation of documents, or, doing a business plan or whatever else that I had to complete for a client, I had to make sure that I had credible information. And the one way to make sure the information is credible is to go to the source. So going straight to the commercial code gave me access to what it is that I needed to have. And then professional legal resources. These are really, really good places to get information. Attorneys specializing in corporate law can provide guidance and access to relevant resources for finding the corporate code of a specific state. So it's really important for you to know where you can go to get that information. Forming a corporation. Well, you choose a state. Select the state where the corporation will be incorporated based on the factors such as tax implication and regulatory environment. I often will tell people, because they'll ask me, well, I'm doing a business, I want to make it a corporation. Should I incorporate in Delaware? Or should I incorporate in Wyoming? Or should I incorporate in Nevada? Or should I incorporate in Texas? Or should I incorporate in Tennessee? And so a lot of times people are looking for places where there's no state tax, no state income tax. And so by calling out some of those particular states, gives you the idea to know that, when you're looking for the potential of minimizing your expenses in a company, you might, choose a place that has some, perks for coming there and establishing your business there. But the couple of things that you want to know about doing that, because some people don't realize that just because you establish your business in the state doesn't necessarily mean that you can go and do business just anywhere you want, okay? Sometimes you establish a business in Nevada and you're doing business in California, technically, or from California, even though you might be serving people all over the internet. California might have some rules in their commercial code that prohibits you from serving someone from their state. If you're located in their state, even though your customer might be in a different state, you might be held to a certain set of rules in the commercial code that requires you to become a foreign corporation in order for you to provide services to people in their state. Because California has some really interesting rules about you serving people in California. So it's not just about who you're serving and where they live. It's about where you're serving them from. And you need to do your own due diligence to make sure that you are legally able to provide services to people in the state where you have your physical jurisdiction, okay? Because if not, then you could be in a situation where you not only have to get a license to provide that service per that particular city or county, but you might also have to have a foreign incorporation status, which means that you may have well just done business in California and incorporated in California, if that's where you're going to be living for most of the time. So filing articles of incorporation, generally it's the same amongst all states. You're going to have to submit a formal document to the Secretary of State, outlining the corporation's basic information, such as the name, the purpose, and the structure. Now, most states now have that process online, and you can go to the Secretary of State's website, and generally you'll see something that says Business Services, or it might say Department of Corporations, or something similar. Or they may have a search window at the top on the right-hand corner that gives you the ability to put in what you're looking for. And when you put in incorporate, then what will happen is it will come back with the information necessary telling you how to incorporate in that state. Then you're going to need to obtain a corporate charter. So upon approval, the state will issue you a document. Some states call it a certificate of incorporation. Other states might call it an acknowledgement of incorporation. Based on the state, it could be something, even different than that. I don't know, and because I've done incorporations in a lot of different states, but not all. So I don't have the knowledge to tell you what each and every one is called. But I can tell you this, that you will be granted the legal recognition that allows you to operate in that state as a corporation. However, please be advised that you might still need to get a permit or license to do business in a particular city or county. So, or even an unincorporated county might not require that you have a permit or a license, per se, because they are unincorporated. But there may be other regulations that you have to attend to in their county. So it's important for you to, again, to do the due diligence, to find out that information, what's required in that area. Now, how do you find that information out? Well, the way you find that information out is you're going to have to literally go, again, to a website, or even, you might stop to the visitor center of that city, and get the information, going to the city's website, the official website for the city, and finding out what the rules are for, doing business in their city. If you have to, file a fictitious business name statement, even though you might have an incorporation, it might still be your responsibility to get that fictitious business name statement with that city. I ran into a situation like that in the city of Arlington, Texas, where even though we had incorporated, it was, in order for us to do certain types of business, they wanted a fictitious business name statement, with the same name. Okay, it seemed really odd, but it was just a rule at the time, that's what they had to have for us to do business in that city. So you need to make sure that you are, doing the things necessary to become compliant with the laws of that city and county. Then you need to establish a board of directors. Board of directors they're responsible for governing the corporation and making key decisions and overseeing the management. So generally, there needs to be, at least one person's name on the corporate document, and that person can serve as the president, secretary and treasurer, or in some cases, hold the director's positions of the company, temporarily until you establish something more formal with the people who are actually going to be doing those particular, holding those offices. Okay, so corporate taxes, a tax that's levied on the net income of the corporation, calculated as a percentage of its taxable profits, is something that you can expect per the federal government. The federal government, although it passes along the responsibility to the states to do a lot of things, it handles its own areas of revenue. Okay, so that's why we have an Internal Revenue Service, and that's why there are federal tax returns that have to be filed, and it's calculating the percentage of the taxable profits and other things that go on that tax form that allows the federal government to receive your fair share for helping to run the country. Okay, but in the states, they also might have a franchise tax. And so it's a tax that's imposed on corporations based on their capital assets or income, and it's often required for the privilege of doing business within a state. And then there's sales tax, for you to be able to collect the tax on goods and services, which corporations might be required to charge and remit to the state. That's a responsibility that you have to go to, the necessary sales tax divisions within your state and make sure that you are getting the proper information as well as your certificates to allow you to conduct revenue generating activities in the city or county where you are. And then property taxes are also assessed on the value of the real estate that's owned by the corporation, and that has to be paid annually to the local government. All right, so then the purpose of corporate taxes would be for public services. They use that revenue to fund essential public services such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and public safety. Then economic regulation, the states need to make sure that they have the ability to do certain things, and corporate tax rates influence business decisions and investments, because it helps to shape the overall economy of the state. And so you want to be paying attention that your taxes do hold weight in your state if the state is, having receiving income tax. Or even, the local taxes. There's lots of different taxes, that can be imposed upon the corporation for doing business in the state. And so just be aware that there also might be some local taxes for the schools and, different types of things that you will have to pay for you to, again, share your fair share with other people. And then, of course, economic growth. They use the state taxes for infrastructure, education, research, and other things. And so corporate taxes can contribute to the long-term economic growth and development of the state. Okay, so lastly, we really want to just talk about the states that don't have corporate tax. Well, Nevada is one of those states that does not levy a corporate income tax. It makes it a popular destination for business seeking tax advantages. Wyoming does not have any corporate income tax as well, and it is attractive for businesses seeking a tax-friendly environment. South Dakota doesn't have any income tax, and it's also a popular place for doing business. Alaska is another state that does not have an income tax, and it helps to attract businesses and boost economic activity. Now, some other states that are not on this list, and I really want to share that Texas does not have a state income tax, and neither does Florida, and Tennessee. So you got those three states that do not have state income tax as well. And so there may be other taxes that are imposed upon businesses in those states, but for the most part, the income tax is not one that the states are, or the corporate tax is not one that a state is imposing, those states that I have mentioned. Well, this has been Dr. Patience Jackson Rose with our Foundations of Corporations class today. We are so glad that you joined us. It was a short one, but a meaningful one, and we hope that you'll join us next month on first Thursdays for our next class. We hope that this gives you a good foundation for how corporations work and how you need to establish one in your state.